Have you ever made a financial decision just to feel better? Not because it was strategic, not because it fit your plan, but because you were tired of feeling behind. Most expensive financial decisions don't start with math, they start with pressure, and pressure changes how you think. There have been moments in my own life where I didn't make decisions because I thought it was wise. I made them because I wanted the pressure to stop. That's what we're unpacking today. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Before the Returns. I'm your host, Jaden Zubal, and today we are going to unpack the effects of the decisions that we make and the pressure that causes us to make those decisions, and when that pressure can be a good thing versus when it's a bad thing. So let's say we combine two situations for a moment and we look at them side by side. Both have the same income and overall the same circumstances. But over here on my left, this person feels behind, feels pressured, feels like things aren't working. And over here on my right, this person feels steady, calm, like things are on track. Again, same income scenarios though. So pressure isn't about just the numbers. It's not just about the income coming in the door. It's about comparison, expectation, and identity. So here's what we sometimes forget to think about. But when you feel behind, urgency can feel like clarity. The urgency to make a decision and get something done quickly feels like it's this relief. You get this emotional relief that comes from just making the decision, getting it out of the way, and being done with it, regardless of whether it was the right decision or not. And that's dangerous. And I would say in a lot of cases, high income earners are especially vulnerable to this urgency pressure. As somebody who is an investor and working with different financial groups and coaches and all these different people, we can often feel pressured to jump into something, and there's a million different sources or reasons that a coach might might add pressure to your picture. So as income rises, what ends up happening in a lot of cases is expectations rise, lifestyles expand. We buy new cars, new houses, we get new things that just increase our overall expenses and our lifestyle. We often hear this called lifestyle creep. So we think that making more money will remove pressure, but in a lot of cases, it just adds pressure, right? It just magnifies what we're dealing with and expands the picture. If we consider our own lives for a minute, think about your own life. Think about as you've increased income and watch what happens when pressure meets opportunity. Okay, let me say that again. Watch what happens when pressure meets opportunity. For example, let's say income has gone up, you feel like you're doing pretty well, you have a little bit of extra money laying around now, and you're ready to invest in some things. And you've heard about your friends doing, XYZ, and they seem to be doing good with it. But then you hear about this guy over here that's doing something and has gotten some great returns. And then you hear about this guy over here, and you have each of these different people coming to you and saying, yeah, look what I've done, and look how great this is going. And you're just kind of getting from every angle these different things. And this happens a lot as a income earner. You're going to experience where all of a sudden there's tons and tons of opportunities that keep coming up, because as soon as somebody understands that, hey, you have money and you're ready to invest, there's a million reasons why you need to make that investment right away. So that's when the pressure starts to build. Without the proper structure, without the proper framework, what this means for you is that standards start to drop, speed increases, meaning you feel this pressure to make decisions fast, and time horizons shrink. So we do start making decisions faster. Now, I'm not saying that making a quick decision is a bad thing, but a quick decision can only be made effectively and appropriately if we're making that decision within a certain framework, if we've already got these boundaries set. It's why for a lot of real estate investors, they will use different tools and calculators and things to help them plug in a couple of different numbers and then get some very specific outputs on their property, whether, based on the purchase price and the cash flow and all these different factors, whether that property is going to do well or not, right? Because it's a simple decision if you have the right inputs and you get the right information. But without the right information and without the right framework, you just making a quick decision could mean the difference of financial freedom in a year, financial freedom in 5 years, financial freedom in 25 years. You might set yourself back without even realizing it because you made a quick decision without the proper structure or framework in place. So to even have a framework though, we really have to look at why are we making the decisions that we make, at least when it comes to a financial perspective. Are we buying to feel established? Are we investing to feel ahead? Are we selling something to stop anxiety? I hear this one a lot, especially with real estate investors again, is they get involved in a property that maybe at one point was doing well and things start to go wrong, things aren't doing well anymore, and then we sell quickly. I've personally done this. I've sold properties that I now regret selling because of the anxiety at the time and not wanting to deal with the issues. So again, framework, understanding what are the issues that might come up and being prepared for those so that you can make better decisions that hopefully you won't regret later down the road. Because relief can feel productive, but it's emotional, right? If we're just making that decision to feel relief, we're making an emotional decision. And emotional relief decisions, when it comes to finance, almost always end up costing us more than what they actually solve. So while relief might feel like progress for a minute, what it ends up being is just an emotional relief. When you're calm, you have the ability to think in long-term horizons. You can think in years, even decades. You can strategize long-term and you can build parameters and frameworks for yourself. And when you're pressured, you often think in months or weeks or days or even hours. We make quick decisions to relieve that pressure. And that's the distortion. So you're trading a 10-year outlook for a 10-day outlook. And that means that discipline just quietly erodes away in the background. So we lose the ability to be disciplined when we feel that pressure and make those quick decisions. Again, without the framework, we have nothing to hold the puzzle together. The picture gets shifted and we can easily fall off track. And it's not because you're reckless or you're choosing to make poor financial decisions. You're just feeling that pressure, and the pressure is pushing you to emotionally make decisions, not structurally. So let me give an example of this. I've mentioned just briefly over the last few minutes some things about real estate here and there, but a good example of that for me is back when I very first started investing in real estate. So I started I started about 10 years ago now. And when I bought my first property, everything was going pretty well. This was an inexpensive property in the state of Florida. It was what they call turnkey real estate. And so we didn't pay very much for it. And it was really with the intent of getting cash flow. And the way I understood real estate up to that point was, okay, I want to buy these inexpensive properties. And if I buy enough of them, I can get, $200, $300, $400 a month in cash flow. But if I buy a whole bunch of those, we end up with 30 or 40 of them. That's where I can get to the point that I can start replacing income and allowing it to manage my expenses. So this was a very early entry into real estate. And so I made the decision and I bought the property. Well, I bought this with two partners, and then a few years down the road, things started to shift, and we kind of came to this conclusion that okay, while the property is doing fine and we haven't really lost money on it, we also aren't making a ton of money. And one of the partners wanted to sell, and we had two properties at the time in this partnership. He decided he wanted to get out of both. Now, the decision that I had to make at that point was, okay, do I just buy that partner out, or do I sell so that everybody can just get out? And there was a lot of pressure to make decisions rapidly. And because of that pressure, it felt easier to simply sell than to try and figure out how I was going to buy the partner out. Because at the time, I was just starting a family, having kids. There's a lot going on. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do there. And I made the decision too quickly because I didn't really have a framework around my long term goal anymore. I'd kind of lost that picture for a minute. And because I lost that picture for a minute, I said, let's just go ahead and sell. Got out. And you know what happened? We just let the real estate die for a couple of years. Nothing happened. We sold out. We got both of those properties gone. Everybody took their money, went their separate ways, and then didn't really do much for a couple of years after that. And we just sat on it. So it took me a few years to kind of catch up, get back on track, get the real estate going again. And I've since expanded quite a bit. But I can look back now and I can say that that decision probably set me back a couple of years in my investing, if not more. And it was because I made a quick decision based on limited information and without a framework of what I was actually trying to accomplish. I lost sight of that framework for a moment and just made an emotional decision in my investing, which is a bad decision looking back on it. So the opportunity wasn't the problem. It was my state of mind at the time that I had to make the decision. So since then, I've really worked on developing a framework around making financial decisions. And if I could today, I want to offer just a couple of simple ideas. Let's start with just three main ideas, three main concepts. So the first is, would I still make this same decision this same way if I did not feel rushed? The second is, if I make this decision, does it destabilize my foundational layer financially? Does it destabilize my ability to take care of my family, to support myself, to support our household, to continue doing all of the things that we've been doing? And third, and this is probably the primary one that I missed in that real estate opportunity, was, am I moving toward what I'm trying to build long term, or am I just moving away from discomfort? Had I answered that question appropriately, I would be in a different situation. I would not have just sold those properties and then kind of sat on it for a while I reworked my framework, because I would have had the framework in the first place. So it's not always that you need better investments. What you really need is lower pressure before deciding, before making decisions on those investments. You either have to lower the pressure, or in the cases that you can't lower the pressure and you need to be able to make quick decisions, which does sometimes happen, you got to have a framework. You got to have, here are the parameters that I'm going to stay within when I make my investing choices. So income matters and structure matters, but emotional steadiness can protect both of those things. And when we're not able to be emotionally steady, when we are kind of worked up or in a place where things have to happen quickly, framework. We got to fall back on the structure, because it's not even that pressure makes you stupid, right? It just simply makes you reactive. And speaking from personal experience, reactivity is expensive. So sometimes just pausing for a moment can be a real financial skill. Okay, so in the last couple of episodes, we have talked about a few different things that all kind of align with each other and I think are really, really important for making financial decisions. We've talked about how income gives you power, structure protects that power, and now we've talked about how pressure can override both if we're really not firm in that structure and that framework. So to bring it all home for a moment, it's vitally important that we set the parameters for ourselves and we have the structure, we have the framework before we're in the emotional position. And then when we're in those positions, because they will come up, they will happen. When we're in that period, it's important to just take a step back for a moment, look at our framework, remember the big picture, remember the long-term goal, and then make the decision. Don't make the decision in the heat of the moment. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. It really helps grow the channel, and we appreciate all the support. And we'll talk to you again next week.